what we're going to do is we're going to open this up, confirm everything that's in there, and then we're going to tear it apart and figure out what we're going to do with this thing. All right, so let's get to it. So I was messing around on Facebook looking for some deals, and I ran across this guy who was selling this PC with some other components, well, accessories really. And this PC comes with I believe a keyboard and mouse, and we'll find that out here when we open it. But he had bought that other stuff, and he had actually bought it for his father, who had no use for it. He didn't want one, and so they held on to it for about a month, and he ended up listing it along with the accessories for, I think it was like $4,200 or $4,100. I just saved it rather than reaching out to him, because that was too much in my opinion, and so I wasn't going to get any value out of that as far as what I could do with that PC. And then I think he brought it down to, like, I want to say 3,600 or 3,400 or something like that. And I still didn't reach out to him. But then he listed it for 3,000. And that was when I reached out to him. And so, as you saw in the pictures, I offered him $2,500 for the PC at the end of the day. And just the PC. I didn't want the accessories or anything, because those things are, you just don't get your money's worth out of trying to sell those things. And so, yeah, and he took it. He took the $2,500. So here we are, taking a look at this stuff. And here's some accessories. It looks like this is a Wi-Fi antenna, the power cord, and some extra Alienware stuff. And here's the standard Alienware mouse and a standard Dell keyboard. Actually, I think this is a Dell mouse, not an Alienware mouse. Yeah, it's a Dell mouse and a Dell keyboard, and a couple of Alienware stickers. Right, and so that's what comes in this box right here. All right. Well, so far so good. It says embossed in here into the side panel here, it says Aurora. And it does indeed look like an Alienware. There's the Alienware AIO, the pump at least. There we have it. Looks like a little more foam. There's no other packing in there, which is a little concerning from a shipping standpoint. Usually you'll see some packing in there, especially to protect the GPU. And there's a lot of peel plastic on here. So, and we're going to end up tearing this PC apart. So we're going to go ahead and peel off the plastic. All right. All right, so here we are in the Alienware desktop. All right. There's the RTX 4090. So we're good there. CPU is the 14900KF, 64 gigs of memory. Interestingly enough, it's running at 5600 megatransfers a second. He advertised it was 5200 megatransfers a second, but obviously it's higher than that. And we got a SK Hynix 2 terabyte NVMe. The device manager, make sure we don't have any conflicts. All right, so we're looking pretty good here. Looking pretty damn good. So let's get in the BIOS and see what we got. This version is 2.12.0. Okay, so this is just the CPU overclocking. Where is the memory? There is no way to overclock the memory. All right, so that's it. That's what we got. So let's tear this thing apart. So first things first, I believe that we need to take this screw out. It's a captive screw. So if we pull that, and now we're able to remove this. All right. Okay, this just pops out. I know you guys are hoping to, or worried about me breaking something. Yeah. Alienware is kind of weird in that, opening their boxes is kind of like a puzzle. They have a secondary piece right here that covers most of the cable management. Is that where the motherboard sits? I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's gonna pop out because of the rivets. There are rivets right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rivets. All right. Well, let's take it apart from the front side then. Okay, this looks like just a GPU support. There. This thing's not even screwed in. There's no screws right there. And this looks like just a sled for a HDD. And then we've got this bad boy. Comes right off. Like their own version of it, or I don't know. Kind of looks like their own version of NVIDIA's cable adapter. It's like in a 90-degree kind of angle. Well, that's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. All that to cable manage this and to hold this thing in? Really? That's what that's for? Alright. Look at that. The plastic is still on this GPU. Nobody's going to know to remove this. So stupid. This is why nobody likes Alienware. At least nobody that knows anything about PCs. Look at the size of this frickin' motherboard. It goes all... Wow. It's humongous. And we only got 2 DIMM slots, by the way. No, not 4. What do we got here? So this is SK Hynix RAM, rated at 5600. So that's its top speed. Two sticks of 32. And then we've got what? We've got 3 fans, 4 fans cooling this whole thing. A 14900K and a 4090 being cooled by one intake fan that's blocked. and one exhaust fan. Both at 120 millimeters, it looks like. And then a 240 mil AIO. That's proprietary. Yeah. Great job, Alienware. Let's take out that SSD. This is the PC811 from SK Hynix, I believe. Wow, that screw is really loose. Zero pressure, and it turned. That one was way loose too. So 2 loose screws on the motherboard. And as you can see, the thermal paste is not covering the entirety of the IHS. And it's very thin and very dry. I mean, how much money are you really saving in not putting enough thermal paste on there? Seriously. Very little thermal paste on there. All right. Pretty much we're going to keep everything else in here. We remove the RAM, we remove the SSD, the GPU, and the CPU. That's really all we wanted out of this PC. All right, so let's get to the plan. All right, so I'm gonna do my overall thoughts and review of this PC, and then we're gonna get into my plan on what I'm gonna do with this. So the BIOS version of this PC was 2.12.0, and that came out in September of 2024. The latest version is 2.15.0, and that came out in February of this year. So the BIOS being from September 2024 is kind of understandable, mostly because, you know, it's kind of been sitting in a box for a couple months. So the guy I got this off of probably bought it right off the shelf or had it delivered right off the shelf from Dell, and you know, never opened it, so never updated the BIOS. So that's completely understandable. The problem with the BIOS is that it's a very limited BIOS. So on the CPU side, the only overclocking that you can do is by selecting the Dell preset for Intel's overclock on the motherboard. And that's it. You can't really do any refinements. You can't undervolt. You can't do any of that stuff. The other thing is the RAM. Remember that it's 2 DIMM slots in there, not 4. And I'm gonna circle back to that here in a second. But more importantly, in the BIOS, there's no changing the 5600 megahertz speed, right? So and you know, it's not a bad thing, but it is a little bit of a concerning thing. You know, the system becomes unstable because of the RAM speed. Then there's no way to get into the BIOS and set it to the base clock speed or anything like that to restabilize it and troubleshoot. The SSD is the SK Hynix PC811, which I believe is a 6.8 gig read speed and 5.6 gig write speed, I think it was. Yeah. And so that's not a bad SSD. Only thing missing is maybe a heatsink for it. The size of the motherboard is insanely huge. It's like beyond an EATX size motherboard, and it hyper extends all the way to the far end of this case. So in order to connect to the front panel ports, like the USB A and C ports. So the motherboard goes all the way out, and that's really, really insane. And you would think that with all that room, remember I said I was going to circle back on the DIMM slots, with all that room, that they would have room for 4 DIMM slots. But no, they've got 2 DIMM slots. While we're talking about the proprietary motherboard and its insane size, there were a couple of loose screws on the motherboard. I mean, they were really loose. I was surprised I wasn't able to just lift them out. They were that loose. So that was a bit concerning as far as the build quality goes. The power supply is also a proprietary power supply. Although it's not a bad power supply, it's 1,000 watts. But it being proprietary, if that power supply goes sideways on you, you're a little bit stuck. You're not going to be able to go to Amazon and buy a power supply that's going to fit correctly into this case. The back I/O is fine. There's nothing majorly wrong with it. I am a little bit disappointed in that there's only a couple of USB Type A 3.2 Gen 1s in there. And then you've got 4 USB 2.0s, which is just, you know, for a system that's got a 14900KF and a 4090 in it, you would think you'd have more. It's got a couple of USB Type Cs. I'm going to assume that these are 10 gig USB Type Cs, considering the quality of the ports that are in the back. It's possible that one of them's a 20 gig USB Type C. I don't want to be unfair to Dell or Alienware as far as that's concerned, but it's possible. And so it's still, like I said, it's not bad, but it ain't great. Not for a system that, you know, goes retail for over $4,000 right now on Amazon. And then we got this. Well, this is the GPU support bracket, right? Okay. But this also is kind of a support bracket. It's a support bracket, and it's not a support bracket. It goes in front of this fan, the only intake fan, which is only a 120 millimeter fan. And I'll circle back to that, but all this is used for is to cable manage the power cable for the GPU, and to hold onto the end of the GPU. See that little bracket right there? It slides right in there. And so, yeah, it's just weird that, and you know, when you look at it and how it would sit, I believe it's set like this. Maybe it's set like this. I can't remember. But either way it sits. See all the area that it blocks the flow of the only intake fan that this system has? It's insane. It's a high negative airflow case. You've got 2 120 millimeter fans on the AIO that's set to exhaust. You got one 120 millimeter fan that's set to exhaust in the back, and you've got one intake fan. And that's for the whole case. That's it. Those are the only fans that are in this case. And it's got a 14900KF and a 4090 in it. Maybe I should have run some tests on the thermals for this. I'm a little bit sorry that I didn't at this point, once I found out what the thermals would probably be like when I looked at the airflow in this case. But, you know, I'm not going to put it all back together just to do that. Let's just assume that the airflow's probably not good, right? The other thing is the going back to the AIO, it's a 240 millimeter AIO. It's not a 360, and there looks like there would be room for a 360 in here, but they decided to go with a 240 to cool a 14900 KF that had very thin amount of thermal paste. So thin, in fact, that when I took the pump off the CPU, I could still see the print on the CPU that Intel had put on there, on the IHS. And then finally, on the back, right behind the motherboard and under the side panel on the back of the case, there seemed to be no way for me to take this back panel off, because this looks like it's riveted in 5 different spots right along this spine right here. At this point, I'm not planning on keeping it, so I'm not planning on trying to figure that out. Although I did look for some videos on how to do it, and I couldn't find any. So yeah, it might be, maybe it's in the instruction manual. That's pretty much it. That's everything that I wanted to make sure that I covered as far as reviewing the build quality of this case and the choices that Dell made. All right, and so let's get to what my plan is. So my plan is to sell the 4090 off on the market, because I've already got a RTX 4090. I've got the Founders Edition 4090. I'm quite happy with that, and so I don't really need another 4090. And so I think I'm going to do that and recoup most of the $2,500 that I spent on this PC. Once I figure out what I do with the 14900 KF, I'll pretty much make most of my money back, if not all of it. And I'll probably, if I had to guess, I would say that I would be in the black after that. And so that leaves me with the 2 sticks of SK Hynix RAM, the 2 32 gig sticks for a total of 64 gigs SK Hynix RAM, and then I've got the SSD that I just talked about, and then whatever I decide to put in here, right? So I could pretty much do another build with this stuff and do another build with what's left of the R16. And so what I'm thinking is, I'm thinking about putting a 13600K into this case, and I've got a decent amount of GPUs. So I've got a 4070, I've got a 3070, I've got a 3060, I've got 2 3060 Ti's, I've got a 4070 Super. I'm thinking I'm going to put the 3070 in here with the 13600K. I think that'd be a good match. All right, so that's my plan. Why don't you tell me down in the comments what you would do with all this stuff? Does my plan sound good to you, or do you think that you would do it differently? And if you would do it differently, tell me down in the comments what you yourself would do, and maybe I'll use your ideas instead of my ideas. All right? Anyways, thanks for sticking with me on this, and thanks for joining me, and hope to see you in the next one.